Whitman is a open town meeting government. That means that any citizen in Whitman annually or whenever we call a special town meeting gets to come and vote act as the legislature for the town. So they're the ones that appropriate the funds, approve any contracts greater than 3 years, and a bunch of other functions that aren't written to either the selectman, the town administrator, or any other function in town. After the legislative branch being town meeting, every citizen in town, there's the executive branch, which is the Board of Selectmen. And we act as the town's executive. We appoint a chief municipal officer, which for us is the town administrator, to oversee the day-to-day. But any decisions outside of basic operations has to come to us. And then to continue the comparison, I think our judicial branch would be like the Attorney General or something along those lines, handled by the Commonwealth.
How many times is this you're running for selectmen?
So I ran in 2019 for the first time. We served 3-year terms, so I'm up again this year.
Nice. So how did it go the first time? Like how did it start? Like how did you this is something I really need to do? Because you mentioned you saw a point where you could help the community better. Lastly, what made you want to do this again?
Being on the finance committee, there were limits to. I was doing that as kind of a thing to do at night in Whitman to keep myself busy, to learn more about local politics. And after 2 years there, I thought if I want to change some policies in town, you got to get on the policy setting board, which is the Board of Selectmen. So I, took out papers. It was there were 2 candidates up for re-election at the time, and I ran against both of them. And the way it turned out, Brian Bezanson won re-election, but I topped the ticket. So I was the candidate that received the most votes. I think I got, I'm gonna butcher it if I try to remember, but I got more than any of the other candidates as a first-time candidate, which was huge.
Nice.
And the incumbent that I defeated is now the town manager in Abington. So I think everything worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
For everybody.
So what's pushing you to run again?
A lot of the things that I wanted to see done kind of got derailed by COVID. Whitman's made a lot of progress in the last couple of years. We did join the Community Preservation Act. We set up the Community Preservation Committee, but we haven't started funding projects through that. We've become a municipal vulnerability preparedness town, an MVP. We got the planning grant, laid out our plan, but we haven't yet funded any projects with it. So that's one of those state climate preparedness program things. And so I'd like to see, now that I've done all of this work to put all the building blocks in place, I want to actually see them do stuff. I want to follow the projects through.
What does it mean to be I believe you shortened it to MVP. What does it mean for your town to be that?
So this was a program that Governor Baker put together, I don't remember how long ago, not that long ago. And he actually mentioned it in his State of the Commonwealth recently, that I think it's 90-something% of communities have since joined. It was a pool of money for any town to opt into to develop a plan looking at their community and how climate change is going to affect them. So for a town like Whitman, we worked with the Old Colony Planning Council based out of Brockton. And they took a look at our community and said, you've got to worry about increased windstorms, more potentially devastating blizzards and floods. You'll have occasional heat waves. We mentioned pandemics because we were in the middle of one. And looking at all of that stuff, what's it going to do to the town? We highlighted there are 2 dams in town that are both pretty old. And if we have increased flooding from maybe longer droughts, but then really strong rainstorms in a short period of time, you'd tend to have dams overtopping. And just using Hobart's Pond as an example, the dam at the end of that, it would flood downhill into South Ave toward Franklin Street. And you'd lose, it'd be a lot of damage to a lot of buildings. If we have prolonged, windstorms would tend to cause prolonged blackouts. We've seen that in the last couple of years. So doing this planning process, we were able to identify our vulnerabilities. And now that work is done, we can start applying to more state grants that would do things like provide generators to maybe the library, which would be an emergency cooling or heating center if power were out in town. We can look at improving water infrastructure so that if the dam overtops or if we have flooding elsewhere in town, we can handle it. We know where the water's going to go. We can redirect it somewhere. Because a lot of this, our sewer system was put in the 70s or 80s. A lot of this stuff, we know more about how it's going to work now than we did back then.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is the kind of stuff that I get really excited about in local government, and nobody asks me about. We have a sewer force main project that we're currently beginning. It was funded last year at town meeting to replace the primary feed of our sewer system that takes everything to Brockton to the sewer treatment plant. We own the entire line from here to the treatment plant.
Nice.
And we've town meeting appropriated or authorized the borrowing for the DPW to replace that line. It's time. We've had a couple of breaks in the last couple of years, and each one of those breaks cost the town of Whitman about $500,000 to repair. So for us to spend,
like hemorrhage.
Yeah, it's a lot. And those were pretty easy to repair breaks. We're worried about some of the other spots in the middle that might be more difficult to get at. Would potentially, Brockton has a capped landfill that we run very close to. If there were a break there, it would be much more money. So thankfully, the citizens of Whitman allowed us to borrow the money to repair that. Sewer rates are probably, or I think the commissioners have already voted to increase sewer rates to pay for that bond. So that I'll hear that, but it's time to start fixing some of these aging infrastructure projects.